Welcome to very boring first video of Fluency Bridge Russian. I do have this board, but I do not have the tripod. So for this video, you will have to bear my face. Let's talk about what are we going to different or what am I going to be doing different in Fluency Bridge Russian from other language teachers. And why Russian in itself? There are so many languages which one could choose from very conveniently and which are perhaps easier to learn. Russian is one of the hardest language to learn officially for English speakers. Pardon my bad mic because I'd have to get that repaired and it will be fixed real quick. See, the main idea with Fluency Bench is when people start teaching the language, they are already sort of an expert in the language. What happens is they have lost all the nuance. When they were learning the language, they probably would have faced multiples of small little teeny tiny changes which they forgot about. And now they don't remember that other people who are learning the language also face those challenges. And you cannot encapsulate those challenges unless you are actively going through the journey because there are so many that it is very hard to keep track of. Language learning being a very long process of perhaps at the very least 1 or 2 years does not allows for such leeway or such broad documentation. The only way to get over that limitation that is caused by the wide time frame that is involved in learning a language is to record and solve all the problems that I am facing while learning the Russian language and record it so that when the other person faces it in their journey, they don't have to look into 10 different corners of the internet. They can just come to one thing and get all the answers, literally everything related to a language. And yes, this is ambitious, but my aim is to cover literally every single teeny tiny bit of this language. It's going to be a big project. It's going to be, at the very least, 2 or 3 year long project. But I hope to encapsulate everything that there is in the process of me learning the language. And the skills would be transferable to other languages too. So the main problem, the main USP, if you see this as a commercial venture, is that we are teaching the language from the very beginning, from the point of view of a very beginner learner. I mean, I have been learning Russian for what, past 6 months? It's not a lot of time. I just have been able to learn the basics, and I was not able to dedicate much time to it either. Probably, whereas currently I'm dedicating a lot of time to it because I want to do something spectacular in it. So that is the main reason and main draw of Fluency Bridge is that I want to document the journey of learning the language because most of the times people are just expert in a language. They just respond with it, right, when they appear to teach the language. And just to encapsulate it in one sentence, a lot of nuances lost, a lot of intricacies which they probably could have talked about if they remembered it is lost. They just talk about the higher level stuff and miss out on all the lower level stuff, which leads to people probably not being able to comprehend them unless they have the prior knowledge. Now, what resources will we be using? What approach we will be taking? It's a very broad one because language in itself, as I see it, is not a singular skill, and that is why it is very hard to learn it. It's not a science. In science or similar subjects which have a very great structure, you can just pick up a textbook, start reading, and be assured that if you follow that textbook thoroughly, you will know that subject. In language, there is no such a structure. There are 1,000 different parts, and you don't really know which part is more important. Some of them actually are more important, which is less important, and which one should you focus on right now and would benefit you more. There is obviously vocabulary, which to be fluent or sort of fluent in a language, in Russian I'm talking about, you have to learn at the very least 3 to 4 thousands of words. The grammar, the Russian grammar is very hard. People say it is very hard, but if you put in enough time, it just starts making sense to you. The listening part, you obviously have to listen to make sure your pronunciation is great, because listening affects your pronunciation, and your accent at the end is good, because otherwise you'd create your own new accent if you don't listen to enough content. Finding that basic primary content to listen to, and then moving on to the advanced one, and then speaking it, talking in the language, one of the hardest part, because you actually have to find someone and touch grass. And so many things are involved that it gets messed up and people leave, because there is no structure. There is nothing telling you how to learn the language. You're on your own. You're on your own to decide the, amongst the thousands, literally thousands of tools that are available, which one to use and which one not to use. And it's a very complicated choice. This the aim with this is to simplify it, is to make a structure out of that chaos, is to first encapsulate all that chaos and then structure it. So my idea is to create video about everything that I face. Once I'm done with that process in a year or two, then I take all that and structure it, and it would be awesome. So the resources that we'll be using are very broad, because language in itself is very broad. We'll be extensively using flashcard for once. We'll be using the New Penguin Russian grammar till we are done with it. It's an almost year-long book, despite being handbook size. I mean, it's this is small, you see, but it is very dense. And we'll be using a lot of other things, and we'll be talking about it in details, because the main idea is to capture nuance. The next thing is, why this language? I mean, there are so many different languages which one could choose from. So why this one? See, the region comes down to places where English is not spoken. I mean, you would sort of agree that in India, learning any other Indian language is sort of pretty much not worth it. I'm not saying useless, not worth it, the time it takes to learn a language. Why? Because most people just speak Hindi, or if they don't speak Hindi, they are very comfortable with English, right? So it's not worth the time and effort that it takes to put in a year or two long venture that you need to put in the language. Now let's come to other languages that are famous with new learners. For example, Spanish. Everyone, I don't know why, but everyone when they are going to learn a language goes to Spanish. It's a bad choice, because most Spanish speakers speak English. Other than that, there are not much Spanish speakers either. So, if you even learn the language, despite Spanish being very easy to learn, there is not much reward to you. There are other countries or other languages which don't have English as their tradition, and that is where the main reward comes in, because you essentially are unlocking a new part of the world, right? For example, if you're learning Japanese, then you're unlocking Japan. Those people are not really good with or not very welcome to English. If you're learning Chinese, you are essentially unlocking the biggest, largest country, or I guess second largest country population wise in the world. Similarly, if you are learning Arabic, you are unlocking the entire Arab world. Or perhaps it's complicated because Arabic has so many dialects. You have to learn so many, so it's very complicated. But, anyways, so similar idea goes to Russian. Russian people, or perhaps the way that their governance is built, are not really very welcome to English. And so, if you are learning Russian, you are unlocking access to that part of the world, essentially, because those people don't speak English, and they are monolingual. And if you are a duolingual, you can just have a conversation with every one of them. So, why would this be beneficial? First of all, for studies, if you want to go to study in Russia. Second, obviously, job prospects. See, the way I am looking at it for myself, I see it as way of unlocking international job prospects for me. Learning a skill is easy. I can learn, I guess, car painting in like a year or two, I guess. Learning a language is hard because, once again, the prior theory that car painting is a science, it has a structure. I can follow it, I can put in the hours, and I can reap the rewards. So once you learn the language, it is very easy to just get trained and placed wherever. Language is the biggest barrier and hardest of all to cross. I mean, obviously, if you're talking about IT, etc., I'm just talking about basic skills, right? So, if I know the language, there's a very big probability that I'll get an international job. That is my main motive. And the next thing, obviously, you get to unlock a lot of new content. You get to read the entire Russian literature. You get entire access to Russian culture if you're into it. And obviously, you get to meet a lot of new people. It, somewhere or the other, will unlock new and awesome opportunities. Learning anything is doesn't goes in waste, right? In vain, right? So if you have a region that you'd like to learn Russian, I don't hope to build an audience in this because it is such a very niche language. I just want to go slow. I hope that in 1 or 2 years that this project would go on, I'd build a small audience, and that would be the way to go. I'll also be continuing fluency rich English, so that would be, I guess, these both would be the main thing. So this was an intro to fluency bridge session. Uh, I'll be back as soon as I'll be able to handle this tripod and mic situation. If someone is waiting, bus you mate. Thanks for putting in your time.